today I'm going to be making the order summary component from Frontend Mentor. This is what the final product looks like. As you can see, it's this card with order summary. I've gotten it from the Frontend Mentor website. I've just downloaded the starter pack, so this is exactly what it looks like here. And this is the index.html file. Let's go live and see what this looks like initially. So here you can see you've got the kind of default text and it still needs to be styled, so that's why it looks like it looks the way it is. We can remove the attribution here, so yeah, we can just remove that, and we can remove this here too. Okay, so let's get started by just linking a style sheet here as the first thing. So I'm just going to use an Emmet abbreviation and link a style.css. Here, let's create a new file, style.css, and within the style.css, I'm going to just select everything on the page using this asterisk as a universal selector, and then I'm just going to say background color red, and we'll just check out if that works. Yeah, everything is working. Since I have live server enabled, I just need to press Ctrl S and it will save automatically, which is great. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove any sort of default browser styling. So a browser adds default styling. As you can see, for example, here, there is some margin that has been added by the browser. In a second, we can see that go away by saying border 0 and margin 0. And then now pay attention while I save. As you can see, that changed, and it's because we're removing the default border and margin that's applied by the browser. So that's the first step that I always like to take. Let's reset this back to 100. Okay, so now that we have that style.css linked, let's go ahead and go into the HTML and start actually styling this and adding elements so that we can later style it. Alright, so emmet.abbreviation, I'm going to say div.card, and that's just going to be my kind of card element. Order summary, okay, actually let's look at the style for a second. Alright, so I see an image here, so I'm just going to say image card header, and we're going to say /images, illustration hero, and then that should show up. Yeah, great. And then for the alt, which is the alternate text, which is important if somebody's using a screen reader or something like that, I'm just going to say this is a image, like this is a header image for the card. Okay, and there we go, straight away. Okay, that's good. Order summary, let's go ahead and do this as an H1, so that's heading 1, and I'm going to say card title. Order summary, okay, save. So the browser applies the default styling for a heading. So that's the default styling that you're seeing there. That's why the order summary is bold and it's bigger than other text. Okay, here I'm going to say view command palette emmet wrap with abbreviation and subtitle. So that's going to be the subtitle there. For the card, so you have the title, the subtitle, the image header, and we're going to go ahead and do a flex row, because what I'm seeing here is this going to be a flex row. So div.flex row, later we'll get onto the styling, but right now I have to add that so that I actually can style it later. And then I'm going to say image music icon. Why is it not wanting to behave? Music icon. Okay, /images, icon music. This is a music icon. Alright, cool. And then here I also want to wrap this with with a div and say flex column. And then I'm going to just copy and paste this into here. And then the annual plan, it's kind of bolded, the text. We can do this with styling, but we can also do this in the HTML. So I'm just going to write strong, and I'm going to say mini title. But that strong class will already apply a kind of styling here. Yeah, so as you can see, it's bolded. So that's something that we want. So I'm going to say, I'm going to do the strong tag, do that element. Then what we're going to do here is we're going to do this price. I'm just going to say P for price. Okay, this is inside that flex column, so that will be a column later. And then here we'll have this change button. So we'll do view, emit, and we can actually do this as a button. But this also could be styled as a P. Right now, I'm not actually doing like the JavaScript or anything like that. So we don't have to do it as a button, but just, I guess, to be more correct, we can do it as a button. And we can say change button, and then copy, and let me paste it in here. Because this needs to be wrapped like in this flex row, right? So that's why I'm pasting all of this stuff inside so that it can be wrapped with this flex row. And then we have two buttons. We have the proceed to payment button and we have the cancel order button. So I'm going to change this and make it not a button. I'm going to say P. Okay, well, I'll tell you why later. But right now I'm going to change that and make it not a button. View command palette emit rep with abbreviation button, and then view command palette button. Okay, and this one will be class pay button, and this one will be class cancel button. All right, cool. The most boring part, I think, is over, which is filling out this HTML. So we'll see how that's going. All right, so we've got that filled out. Now we can move on to the styling. Let's take a look at this style guide and see what font we have to use. So here we have this Red Hat display font. So I'm just going to click Get Font, Get Embed Code. Embed code in the head of your HTML. So I'm just going to copy that. And I'm going to go into the head and I'm just going to paste it. Yeah, that's fine. And then here what I'm going to do is I can say font, family, and then we're going to call Red Hat display. All right, save. And now, as you can see, that's all changed. If you want, you can see the before and the after. So yeah, straight away it changes, and that's exactly what we want here with that style guide. Okay, so now that we have that done, let's actually move on to getting this card kind of done. So, all right, so for the body, what I'm going to say is I'm going to say body display grid, and I'm going to do a display of grid so that I can say place content center. And something that I also have to do is I have to say height will be 100 viewport height. Okay, yeah, so that's all in the center now. So yeah, so when I apply display of grid and I say the height, I'm defining the height as 100% of the viewport, so that means the whole page. And then place content center, that will make my life easier because then the card will just be in the middle of the page. I'm actually going to give the card a max width of 500 pixels and we'll see what that looks like. Yeah, okay, so now this is all in the middle of the page and it looks good. So we can see how big this card is. Okay, probably like max width of 460 or something like that. Okay, all right, let's actually move on to styling the card. So what I'm going to do for this card, I'm going to say border radius of 1 rem. Okay, so that's going to change the border radius. And actually, I need to change the background color because this background color is this kind of like blue grayish color, and we can't really see what's going on with the card so long as we don't change it to that. So let's change the background color to that blue grayish. So let's go to the style guide, and is it this gray? Hopefully. Okay, it's not this gray because that's way too strong. I think it's probably this one. Yeah, okay, I think it's this one. And this card has a background color of white. So I'm going to say background color white. All right, cool. So now we can actually see that card. That's looking a little bit weird. Why does it have that there? Okay, well, we're just going to style this image inside of the card. We're going to say the card header. So we're going to say dot card header, and we're going to apply a border top left radius of 1 rem, and that's going to make this this kind of have this corner be a bit rounded. And then what I'm going to say as well here is I'm going to say border top right radius 1 rem, and that's going to make that other corner rounded. And now I'm going to check why that. Okay, I figured out what's wrong here with this kind of card margin here. There's like a little bit of a gap. We have to just put a width here of 100%. And that's going to fix it. That's going to look a lot better. All right, great. For this card now, I'm going to do text align center. And this is going to get all of the text to be in the center here, which is exactly what you see here. All right, so let's start by styling that actual order summary and that kind of font. So what I'm gonna do is, all right, let's first identify, okay, card title. So dot card title, and I'm just gonna say font size 1 rem, which is 16 pixels. Okay, so that's way too small. Okay, that's too big. We gotta play around a bit. 1.5. I think maybe like 1.75 we can do. And then we can do a margin top of 1 rem. I think it's actually a bit more too. Okay, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do font, or not font, color, and we're going to do this blue, I think it's this one. Okay. All right, that looks good. And then I'm going to change the font weight here. So font weight to 700. All right, that's looking pretty good. Or maybe 800. Yeah, that looks good. 800. All right, and then I'm going to add a margin bottom of 1 rem, and let's take a look now at what we're going to do. Okay, so dot subtitle, and here I'm going to apply a font size of 1 rem and see, oh, not Q rem, 1 rem, and see how that changes. I'm also going to give it a fixed width so that we see that it's kind of like it's not going to be taking up as much space. So we're going to say place self center. Okay, so as you can see, like that's kind of, yeah, that's exactly right, like 360 pixels width. And then we're going to change the font, not font color, color is just color. And we're going to change it to this gray. I think the weight might be a bit less than it is right now, so I'm going to just say font weight of 400. Okay, it's not 400, it's like 500. Yeah, okay, font weight of 500. All right, now I'm going to move on to the flex row, and I'm just going to say display flex. And then the default flex direction is flex row, place self center. That's going to get it into the middle here. We're going to add a gap of 1 rem. I think we have more of a gap there, 2.5. Is that correct? We need a margin top as well, a margin top of 1 rem. That's going to give us some spacing, maybe even 2.5. And then a bottom too. Okay, that's looking good. Here, these 2 buttons, I need to add a div flex column as well. So I'm just going to go to the HTML and fix that. Div.flex column. All right, cool. Then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do align items center so that that change is actually central there. Okay, let me maybe move this a bit so that that change is central there. And is that looking correct? All right, what I'm seeing here that's a little bit of a problem is this is kind of like they're all evenly spaced, but what I'm seeing is these are 2 together and this one's kind of separate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap that, I'm going to wrap this like this with a div. Div flex spacing. Okay. And then I'm going to do dot flex spacing as display flex. All right, perfect. And then I'm going to add a gap of 1 rem as well, or maybe not 1 rem. No, that's correct. 1 rem. And then here, this gap, maybe I'll increase to like 4.5. All right, now I'm going to style the change button. So let's go ahead and do dot change button, and then we have to change its color. So we'll do this blue here. Then we're going to add a underline. So I'm going to say font. I'm going to say not font decoration, text decoration underline. And then we're going to see that underlined. And I'm also going to adjust the font weight here because I think it's a higher font weight. Yeah, I think it's 800. All right, and that's looking pretty good so far. I think like this card is looking correct. So we have these 2 buttons here. What I'm going to do on this card is I'm going to say display grid. And then I'm going to look at these flex column and I'm going to say dot flex column, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a display of flex and a flex direction of column. And as you can see, those are now filling out the whole card, which is not exactly what we want. So we will do a padding here of 1 rem, which we don't want. We will just add a padding to the flex column. But this is also called flex column. So we're going to call this flex col, so it doesn't mess that one up. And we're going to just say 2 rem. And then we're going to give it a gap of 1 rem so that the buttons have a little bit of spacing. And then let's look and see how the buttons are styled. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select button from the HTML selector. And I'm just going to say, because both of them have a bit of padding and both of them have a border radius. So I'm going to say padding 1 rem. And I'm going to say border radius will be like 0.5 rem. Okay, that's looking cool. And then the pay button, so I'm going to say dot pay button, and I'm going to change its color to be this kind of, is it like this bright blue, or is it more like a navy? Okay, it's this bright blue. So I'm going to just change it to that bright blue. The background color. And then I'm going to actually change the color of the text to be white. Like this. Okay, and then the font weight needs to be different because it's like a very faint font weight right now. So I'm going to do 800 and I'm going to say font size of 1 rem. That looks good. That's looking quite nice. And then for the cancel button, I'm pretty sure the cancel button, like it's colorless. So we're just going to say, or it's not colorless, but the color is white. So I'm just going to say color, background color white. The actual color of the text is like this gray. So I'm going to just go ahead and give it this gray. And then let's see what that's looking like. Okay, that looks pretty good. Font weight, actually this font weight we can, or the font weight and the font size we can just put here on the button because both of them have the same styling for that, so we don't have to like repeat ourselves. All right, and that's looking pretty good. I think that there's also a something is wrong kind of here with this flex row. This margin bottom is way too big. Yeah, we're just gonna do 1 rem. All right, that's looking pretty good actually. Like I'm really liking the way that that's looking. The pay button, I think there's a border of like 10 pixels, 10 pixels solid blue. Should we do that and see what that looks like? And then okay, it's not border, it's box shadow. So we're gonna say box shadow, 10 pixels, blue. All right, that's very intense. All right, I think like I have to change one of these values here. Yeah, that's looking better. Let's just minimize some of these values. All right, 2. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Something like that. All right, that's looking good. Like a glow around there. We have the cancel order, proceed to payment, annual plan. That text is still not changed. So let's do just the .mini title needs to change. It's like the color needs to be different. So we're just gonna say .mini title, and then I'm just gonna add a different color here. This one. And then I'm just gonna adjust the font weight to 600. All right, and that's looking pretty good. Maybe it's actually 800. That's looking pretty good. I really like the way that that's looking. The last thing that we need to do here in this style is like, let's kind of look. The background, we have this like swish, we have this like swirl. So we want to add that swirl to our background. This is what our card is looking like so far. I think that looks pretty spot on. And let's add that background swirl to here. So I think that's an image dot background swirl. And let's say / images pattern background desktop. And I'm going to say background swirl pattern. And let's see what that's looking like when we add that straight away. All right, so we want that to be we want the dot background swirl to not take up any space. So that's why I'm going to say position absolute, so that doesn't take up any space. Okay, I'm going to give it a negative Z index, which means it will be positioned behind everything. All right, and then I'm going to give it a width of 100%, and that makes the swirl fit the whole screen. Alright guys, that's the end of the tutorial. Hopefully this helped you and hopefully you learned something new. Subscribe, like if you did. Thanks so much for watching.